There was a time I believed that pursuit was everything, that the chase was the fire that fueled desire. I was told again and again, show her your interest, chase her relentlessly, for if you withdraw, she will slip away. I followed this mantra like a creed, investing my attention, my words, my very presence, hoping to win what seemed just out of reach. But the harder I chased, the more distant she became. Confusion gnawed at me. Why does desire rebel when met with desperate longing? Then I stumbled upon a darker, deeper truth, one whispered by the shadows of Machiavelli. Desire, it seems, is not a prize for the desperate, but a game mastered by the indifferent. Machiavelli's paradox reveals, power in desire does not belong to the one who chases blindly, but to the one who withholds, who controls the currency of attention with ruthless calculation. It is not cruelty to ignore, it is strategy. In the silence of withdrawal, the seed of pursuit is born. In absence, fascination blooms. By the time this video ends, a veil will be lifted. You will understand why ignoring women is not rejection but an art, a mysterious dance of power and psychology that transforms you from a beggar into a prize. Are you prepared to walk the path where silence commands and desire obeys? Or will you remain trapped, chasing illusions that vanish the moment you reach out? The question is simple but brutal. What if the secret to making her chase you lies in the very act of ignoring her? Stay with me, for the answer is darker, more Machiavellian, and more powerful than you ever imagined. From the tender age when our hearts first stir with the mysteries of attraction, a grand illusion is woven into the very fabric of our being. We are taught, by poets and pop songs, by movies and well-meaning mentors, that love is a hunt, a valiant pursuit. We are conditioned to believe that to win the coveted prize of a woman's affection, we must chase. We must prove our devotion through relentless effort, through grand gestures and endless attention. This is the script handed to us, the chivalric code of the modern man, whispered into our ears until it becomes an unshakable truth. Yet, it is precisely this deeply ingrained impulse that often leads to our undoing, transforming us from potential conquerors into supplicating beggars. We pour our essence, our time, our very souls into the chase, believing that our unwavering presence will eventually melt her resolve, only to find ourselves adrift in a sea of indifference, wondering where we went wrong. The harder we pursue, the more elusive she becomes, like a phantom limb forever just beyond our grasp. But what if this entire paradigm is a fallacy? What if the very act of chasing, of relentless pursuit, is not the path to victory, but the road to self-inflicted defeat? Machiavelli, in his ruthless dissection of power, would scoff at such romantic naivety. He understood that true power is not found in the desperate scramble for external validation, but in the quiet, unyielding strength of self-possession. While the world urges us to gallop after our desires, Machiavelli would argue that true mastery, true influence, lies not in the frantic chase, but in the dignified art of restraint. The power dynamic, often misunderstood in the delicate dance between man and woman, is fundamentally altered the moment one commits to the chase. The pursuer, by definition, grants the pursued the position of power, the one who judges, the one who bestows. It is a subtle shift, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but it is the fulcrum upon which the entire relationship dynamic will pivot. The illusion, then, is that our chasing somehow elevates us. In reality, it often diminishes us, stripping away our inherent value piece by painstaking piece, until we are left with nothing but the echoes of our own desperate footsteps. To truly understand the intoxicating power of strategic absence, one must first confront Machiavelli's cold, unyielding law of desire. The Florentine master, ever the pragmatist, understood that power, influence, and even attraction operate on a principle far removed from sentimentality: scarcity. In his world, that which is readily available, easily acquired, and constantly offered, inevitably loses its value. Abundance, in the brutal calculus of human psychology, breeds complacency, diminishes appreciation, and ultimately fosters indifference. Conversely, that which is rare, that which is elusive, that which requires effort or is perpetually just out of reach, that is what ignites the fires of desire, forging it into an almost insatiable hunger. This isn't merely a cynical observation. It is a fundamental truth hardwired into the human psyche, a primordial response to perceived value and potential loss. We are, at our core, creatures who covet what we cannot effortlessly possess. How, then, does this apply to the intricate dance of attraction between man and woman? When a man constantly chases, when he makes himself perpetually available, when his attention is a boundless, unwavering river, he inadvertently signals abundance. He becomes, in the cold logic of desire, a readily available resource, and like any abundant resource, his perceived value diminishes. Why exert effort for something that is already given freely? Why pursue what is already pursuing you? The very act of chasing telegraphs a lack of self-sufficiency, a desperate need that paradoxically repels the very desire it seeks to ignite. A woman, consciously or unconsciously, registers this abundance, and her natural inclination to seek, to explore, to conquer, is short-circuited. There is no challenge, no mystery, no sense of potential loss that would compel her to invest. The prevailing dogma dictates that attention is the currency of connection, the golden thread that weaves two souls together. But for men, particularly in the realm of romantic pursuit, an overabundance of attention often acts as a potent poison, slowly eroding the very foundations of masculine power and appeal. When a man relentlessly chases, when his focus becomes singularly fixated on a woman, he is not merely offering his presence. He is, often unknowingly, draining his own energetic reserves. This constant outward projection of energy, this incessant seeking of her gaze, her smile, her approval, becomes a siphon, drawing vital force away from his own purpose, his own passions, his own self-development. He shifts from being a man driven by an internal compass to one whose direction is dictated by an external object of desire. This fundamental reorientation weakens him, not just in her eyes, but in his own estimation of self. Beyond the energetic drain, incessant chasing systematically dismantles the aura of mystery that is so crucial to sustained attraction. A man who is always there, always available, always laying bare his intentions and desires, leaves nothing to the imagination. The unknown, the unexplored, the possibility of what could be. These are powerful engines of fascination. When a woman knows every thought, every feeling, every desperate attempt to please, the intriguing landscape of the masculine psyche flattens into a predictable path. There is no enigma to unravel, no depths to plumb. Furthermore, this relentless focus on another person inadvertently lowers a man's perceived value. A man who constantly seeks validation from external sources, who makes himself subservient to the whims of another, unconsciously signals that his own self-worth is conditional. He conveys that his happiness, his sense of completion, is dependent on her presence, her approval. This dependence, far from making him endearing, often makes him appear desperate, needy, and ultimately less desirable. The masculine power, which thrives on self-sufficiency and an unwavering sense of internal direction, is systematically dismantled, leaving him vulnerable and, ironically, less attractive to the very woman he seeks to impress. If relentless presence weakens, then strategic absence, paradoxically, seduces. It is a subtle art, often misunderstood as indifference or cruelty, but in its purest form, it is a profound psychological lever. The human mind abhors a vacuum. When something familiar, something that has become a constant, is suddenly withdrawn. The mind immediately seeks to fill that void. This isn't merely a whimsical observation. It's a deeply ingrained cognitive bias. The absence of a man who once pursued, who once was readily available, does not simply create a lack. It creates a psychological space that compels a woman's thoughts to gravitate towards it. This void becomes fertile ground for curiosity, for speculation, and for the powerful, often unconscious, process of idealization. The psychology of ignoring, when executed with deliberate intent and genuine self-possession, fuels obsession far more effectively than any amount of overt presence ever could. When a man recedes, he forces a woman to confront not just his absence, but her own internal landscape. She begins to question. Why is he no longer chasing? Has she misjudged him? Is she no longer desirable? These questions, born of uncertainty, ignite a powerful internal dialogue. Her imagination, unburdened by the constant reality of his presence, is free to construct fantasies, to project qualities and desires onto the absent figure. The mystery of his silence, the enigma of his distance, makes him more alluring, more intriguing. She begins to invest emotionally in trying to understand his withdrawal, to decipher his intentions. This emotional investment, born of a need to resolve the uncertainty, becomes the very fuel of her burgeoning desire. His absence, far from pushing her away, draws her into a psychological labyrinth where he, the absent one, holds the elusive key. Women, whether consciously or instinctively, possess a profound ability to test the mettle of a man. These tests, often subtle and insidious, are designed to probe for one thing above all: validation. A man's willingness to jump through hoops, to provide constant reassurance, to orbit her world, serves as a clear indicator of his psychological state. When a man consistently provides this validation, he unwittingly steps into a dangerous trap. He teaches her that her value is contingent on his affirmation, and in doing so, he diminishes his own. Each readily given compliment, each effusive praise, each eager response to her every whim, becomes a drop of his own power surrendered. He becomes predictable, a reliable source of ego-stroking, and while this might feel good in the moment, it ultimately starves the deeper, more primal desire for a man who is an unwavering force unto himself. The trap is sprung when his identity becomes intertwined with his ability to make her feel good, rather than his intrinsic strength. The refusal to immediately provide this validation, however, becomes a powerful tool of intrigue. When a woman throws out a fishing line for attention, for a compliment, for a desperate plea for her presence, and a man does not bite, something profound shifts. His stoic reservation, his calm indifference to her attempts to solicit a response, creates a vacuum that she instinctively tries to fill. This isn't about being rude or dismissive. It's about holding one's frame, maintaining one's independent value. When her tests are met not with eager compliance, but with a quiet, unyielding self-possession, it forces her to reevaluate. She begins to wonder, why doesn't he need my validation? What makes him so secure in himself? This very refusal signals a hidden strength, a depth that needs to be explored. It transforms him from a predictable source of affirmation into an intriguing challenge, a mystery she feels compelled to unravel. The intrigue, born from the frustration of an unfulfilled need for validation, transmutes into a potent form of desire, compelling her to pursue the very man who refuses to pursue her. The human mind is a narrative engine, constantly seeking to fill in gaps, to connect dots, to complete the unfinished story. This innate drive is never more potent than in the realm of attraction, where the less a woman truly knows about a man, the more fertile the ground for her imagination to sow the seeds of fantasy. Mystery, in this context, is not about deception or feigned aloofness. It is about strategic withholding, an understanding that the truly captivating individual is not one who lays all his cards on the table, but one who hints at deeper, unexplored dimensions. When a man's entire life, his every thought, his every action, is an open book, there is no adventure to embark upon, no secrets to uncover. He becomes a known quantity, and known quantities, no matter how admirable, rarely spark the fires of obsession. The unknown is the territory of excitement, the realm where desire takes root and flourishes. When a man cultivates an aura of mystique, when he doesn't immediately reveal the entirety of his being, he invites a woman to project her own desires, her own idealizations, her own fantasies onto him. He becomes a canvas upon which she paints her perfect partner, endowing him with qualities and depths that may or may not exist. This process of projection is incredibly powerful, as it makes her feel a profound, personal connection to him, a connection that she herself has, in part, created. She becomes invested in the narrative she is weaving around him, driven by an almost compulsive need to see if her projections align with reality. The less she knows, the more she imagines, and the more she imagines, the more deeply she falls into the captivating illusion. This isn't about being manipulative. It's about respecting the psychological truth that human beings are drawn to the unexplored, the unquantified, the tantalizing possibility of what lies beneath the surface. A man who masters the art of mystery becomes a captivating enigma, an unsolvable puzzle that she feels compelled to solve, no matter the cost. To speak of emotional detachment in the context of attraction often conjures images of cruelty or coldness. But in the ruthless psychological landscape of power and desire, emotional detachment is not an absence of feeling, but a profound strategic stance. It is the ability to navigate the turbulent waters of romantic entanglement without being swept away by its currents, to remain centered in one's own sovereignty even amidst the strongest emotional tides. For a man, this detachment is not about shutting down his emotions, but about refusing to make his emotional state dependent on a woman's response. It is the quiet, unyielding resolve to maintain his inner peace, his self-worth, and his direction, irrespective of her fluctuating moods or her availability. This is the hallmark of true masculine strength, an inner fortress that cannot be breached by external validation or emotional blackmail. When a man masters this strategic detachment, he renders himself untouchable in the most profound sense. He becomes immune to the subtle tests, the emotional manipulations, and the desperate pleas for attention that often define the initial stages of courtship. His emotional state is not a reactive reflection of her behavior. It is an independent, self-generated force. This unwavering inner stability, this refusal to be emotionally swayed, is deeply unsettling and profoundly attractive to a woman. It signals that he is not easily influenced, that his value is inherent, and that he cannot be easily controlled. This detachment creates a powerful gravitational pull, as she instinctively seeks to penetrate his calm exterior, to elicit a reaction, to understand the source of his impenetrable resolve. It forces her to invest more, to pursue more, to reveal more of herself in an attempt to break through his composed demeanor. Paradoxically, by refusing to be emotionally tethered to her, he becomes far more captivating, a challenge she cannot resist, compelling her to chase the very man who refuses to be moved. In a world saturated with noise, with constant communication, with a relentless clamor for attention, silence becomes a weapon of devastating power. Words, particularly those spoken in pursuit or desperation, often chase. They overtly state intent, reveal vulnerability, and confirm desire. While there is a time and place for earnest expression, an overabundance of words, particularly in the early stages of attraction, can smother the nascent flames of interest. A man who constantly articulates his feelings, his availability, his eagerness, unwittingly gives away his power. He becomes predictable, an open book, and like a river that flows endlessly, he loses the intrigue of a hidden spring. Every text, every call, every effusive declaration serves to confirm his investment, thereby diminishing hers. The constant stream of verbal validation leaves no room for her own thoughts to wander, no space for her to wonder, to speculate, to feel the absence. Silence, however, does not chase. It pulls. It creates a vacuum, a void that the human mind is compelled to fill. When a man chooses silence strategically, when he withdraws his verbal presence, he forces a woman to confront not just the absence of his voice, but the absence of his attention, his validation, his pursuit. This isn't about being sullen or uncommunicative. It's about choosing one's words with Machiavellian precision, and more importantly, choosing when to withhold them entirely. The unsaid words, the unspoken intentions, the quiet confidence that needs no verbal confirmation, these become far more powerful than any desperate plea. Her mind, starved of direct input, begins to construct narratives, to invent reasons for his silence, often imputing qualities and depths that make him even more compelling. The unanswered text, the unreturned call, the enigmatic pause, these are not voids, but invitations. Invitations for her to ponder, to invest, to chase the unspoken answers. Silence, in its profound power, becomes a language of its own, a language that speaks of self-possession, of independence, and of a value that needs no verbal confirmation, compelling her to lean in, to listen, and ultimately to pursue. The concept might seem brutal, even cruel, but to truly understand the deeper currents of desire, one must confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes it is pain, not pleasure, that ignites the most potent forms of pursuit. When a woman is consistently ignored by a man she is attracted to, especially one who was once attentive, a specific kind of psychological distress begins to set in. This isn't the pain of physical harm, but the sting of ego, the unsettling sensation of not being able to control, to influence, to captivate. It taps into primal fears of rejection, of being overlooked, of not being enough. Her mind, accustomed to a certain level of male attention, now grapples with its conspicuous absence. This void triggers a powerful internal response, a desperate need to re-establish equilibrium, to regain the lost sense of control and validation. The pain, initially born of frustration and confusion, morphs into a driving force, an almost compulsive need to understand, to re-engage, to win back the perceived loss. This isn't about inflicting suffering. It's about understanding the raw, unvarnished mechanics of the human psyche. When a woman feels ignored, her desire often intensifies because the man becomes a challenge, a riddle. Her mind fixates on what she doesn't have, on the attention that is being withheld. The pain of not being able to elicit a response, of not being able to penetrate his composure, fuels a powerful urge to prove her worth, to break through his defenses. She begins to invest emotionally, mentally, and even physically in trying to bridge the distance he has created. This investment, born of a need to alleviate her internal discomfort and regain a sense of mastery, becomes the very engine of her chase. The frustration, the longing, the subtle ache of not having his unwavering attention. These are the powerful, albeit uncomfortable, emotions that drive her to pursue, transforming her initial pain into a fierce, almost unyielding desire to capture his elusive interest. The neglected garden, far from dying, often yearns for cultivation, for the attention that has been withheld, blooming into a desperate pursuit. To embrace the philosophy of strategic ignoring is not to adopt a stance of cruelty or indifference. It is, at its core, an act of profound self-reclamation. It is about a man re-establishing his connection to his own masculine energy, reclaiming the throne of his own existence. For too long, societal narratives have encouraged men to externalize their validation, to find their worth reflected in the eyes of women. This constant outward gaze, this subservience to external approval, slowly erodes the inner core of masculine strength, leaving men feeling adrift and dependent. The masculine throne is not a symbol of tyrannical dominance over others, but a metaphor for sovereign self-possession, a man who is firmly rooted in his own purpose, his own values, and his own unwavering sense of self-worth, irrespective of external fluctuations. It is a man who rules his own internal kingdom, whose happiness is not contingent on the whims or presence of another. When a man chooses to ignore, in the strategic and self-possessed sense, he is not doing so to punish or manipulate. He is, rather, reinforcing his own boundaries, prioritizing his own well-being, and demonstrating that his attention is a valuable resource, not to be indiscriminately squandered. This act of self-assertion, this recentering on his own masculine core, sends a clear and powerful signal. He is not easily swayed, he is not desperate, and his value is intrinsic. This unwavering self-possession is profoundly attractive. It communicates a silent strength, an unshakable confidence that draws women towards him, not because he is chasing them, but because he is unapologetically and powerfully himself. By occupying his own throne, by embodying his own masculine energy, he creates a powerful magnetic field, compelling others to approach him on his terms, rather than him perpetually chasing them on theirs. It is a quiet revolution, a return to an ancient, often forgotten, truth about the wellspring of true masculine appeal. Attraction, at its most fundamental level, is a complex and often unconscious dance of power. It is a delicate ballet of push and pull, of dominance and surrender, a constant negotiation for the upper hand in the intricate dynamics between two individuals. When one person consistently pursues, consistently chases, they inadvertently cede the position of power to the other. The pursuer, by definition, becomes the supplicant, the one seeking, the one hoping for favor. The pursued, by virtue of being desired, occupies the position of the prize, the one who judges, the one who bestows. This seemingly innocuous shift in power dynamic profoundly alters the landscape of attraction, often tilting it irreversibly against the one doing the chasing. The magnetic pull that draws individuals together is not a force of equal and opposite attraction when one side is constantly exerting pressure while the other is merely reacting. The art of strategic ignoring, therefore, is not merely about withholding attention. It is about a deliberate and profound rebalancing of this power dynamic. When a man ceases to chase, when he withdraws his relentless pursuit, he forces a shift. He relinquishes the position of supplicant and, by his very inaction, forces the other party to step into the role of the one who must now exert effort, who must now seek. The power, which was once flowing outward from him in the form of pursuit, now begins to flow inward, making him the center of gravity. This creates a psychological tension, a void that the woman, instinctively drawn to challenge and resolution, feels compelled to fill. She begins to invest her own energy, her own thoughts, her own actions in trying to bridge the distance, to understand the shift, to regain the perceived loss of his attention. The dance transforms from a man chasing a woman into a woman chasing the enigma of a man who refuses to be chased. This reorientation of power, far from being a game of manipulation, becomes a potent catalyst for genuine attraction, as the dynamic shifts from one of desperate seeking to one of intriguing challenge and earned pursuit. And so we arrive at the precipice, the final, chilling truth in this journey through the labyrinth of desire and power. It is here, at the culmination of our Machiavellian insights, that the ultimate paradox reveals itself. True freedom, the kind that both repels and attracts with an almost gravitational force, stems from not needing her at all. This is not a performative indifference, a calculated act designed to manipulate. Such shallow ploys are seen through by the astute eye, for they betray a lurking desperation beneath the facade. No, this is a profound, internal liberation, a state of being where her presence, while perhaps desired, is never a prerequisite for your wholeness, your happiness, or your sense of self-worth. Consider the man whose emotional equilibrium is contingent upon a woman's affection. He is a ship without a rudder, tossed by every shifting tide of her mood, every fleeting glance, every perceived slight. His very identity becomes a reflection in her eyes, and should that reflection waver or disappear, he is lost. This is the antithesis of power. It is servitude, a self-imposed prison built from the bricks of need. Machiavelli, ever the pragmatist, would scoff at such a vulnerability. For him, a prince beholden to another's will, be it a foreign power or a romantic entanglement, is no prince at all. He is merely a puppet, and his strings are easily pulled. The dark freedom of non-need, then, is the severing of these strings. It is the realization that your internal kingdom is sovereign, its walls impenetrable to the whims of external validation. This isn't to say you become an ascetic, devoid of emotion or human connection. On the contrary, it allows for a deeper, more authentic connection, for it is one unburdened by the crushing weight of expectation and fear of loss. When you do not need her, your desire for her transforms. It becomes an appreciation, an elective choice, rather than an existential imperative. This shift is palpable, a subtle but profound alteration in your energetic signature that women, with their finely tuned instincts, unconsciously register. It is in this space of self-sufficiency that you become truly formidable. Your pursuits are your own, your passions are self-generated, and your life is a masterpiece sculpted by your own hands, not a collaborative project dependent on her participation. This self-contained universe is immensely attractive, for it speaks of a man who is grounded, stable, and unshakable. He is a rock in a stormy sea, and others, consciously or unconsciously, seek the security he emanates. This is the dark truth of desire. It often chases what is elusive, what is not easily possessed, what signifies a power that transcends mere physical attraction. The woman who encounters such a man finds herself drawn into his orbit, not because he is trying to pull her in, but because his very existence creates a gravitational field she cannot ignore. This is the ultimate Machiavellian insight for male-female dynamics. Power lies in the absence of need. It is the quiet confidence of a man who knows he is complete unto himself, capable of weathering any storm, with or without a partner by his side. This isn't coldness. It's self-possession. It's the realization that while desire is a powerful engine, dependence is a corrosive rust. Cultivate a life so rich, so fulfilling, so utterly yours, that a woman's presence becomes an exquisite addition, a cherished bonus, but never the fundamental missing piece. For in that glorious, terrifying freedom lies the secret to making her chase you, not out of desperation, but out of an almost primal recognition of your unshakable self-worth.